leprosy. Again, the Mycobacterium leprae, it's the caustic agent, it's gram-positive. The mycolic acid in the cell is actually what's responsible for its slow growth rate, its protection from phagocytic cell lysing, so phagocytosing and popping it. And it's resistant to many antimicrobial drugs, which makes it especially nasty. Again, the pathogens grow best in cooler regions of the body, can live inside infected cells for years. The cellular immune response eventually attacks infected cells, may destroy nerves and other tissues. It's pretty rare. I don't think you're going to just like stumble upon getting leprosy. Diagnosis, treatment and prevention. Diagnosis is based on signs and symptoms confirmed by the presence of acid fast bacilli. It's almost like you guys know how to run an acid fast test. Treated with multiple antimicrobials. Treatment may be lifelong for some patients. Tuberculosis vaccine provides some protection and prevents infections by avoiding continued exposure to the pathogen. Botulism. I mean, this is a fun day, right? Leprosy, botulism, tuberculosis, good times. Botulism is an intoxication with 3 manifestations. Foodborne botulism, our favorite, right? Who doesn't love a little foodborne botulism? Progressive paralysis on both sides of the body, slow recovery from growth of new nerve cells. Infant botulism results from ingestion of the bacteria, nonspecific symptoms, and wound botulism, contamination of the wound by endospores, similar to those of food botulism. None are good. I recommend not getting any of them. Pathogen and virulent factors. Clostridium botulinum is the caustic agent. It's anaerobic, gram-positive, endospore forming bacteria. So can you just take a minute and think how you would figure out that you have botulism if that was, you don't have botulism, by the way. You don't have a virulent strain of botulism in your unknown. But, right, you would see if it's aerobic or anaerobic, you would do a gram-positive, gram-negative. You would look for endospores. See? Boom. And then you would know what it is. There's about 60 cases of foodborne and wound botulism per year in the United States. Infant botulism is the most common form in the United States. Here's how it works. Remember our peripheral neurons. Remember our little friend, the neuron? Here's your muscle cell. Here's your neuron. Here's your synaptic cleft where all your neurotransmitters are. We're exocytosing some neurotransmitters, right? And then we're absorbing these membranes. Vesicles with acetyl chloride, it prevents that from happening. That's your botulism toxin. So it literally prevents your peripheral nervous system from transmitting messages. You can see how that would be really, really bad. Like 0 out of 10, do not recommend. Okay, botulism. More with botulism. So we've got symptoms are diagnostic, 4 approaches to treatment: maintain open and functional airways, wash intestinal tract to remove Clostridium, administer botulism immunoglobulin, and treat with antimicrobial drugs. Prevented by destroying endospores in contaminated food. Infants under 1 year old should not consume honey, so don't feed your baby honey. Tetanus. I mean, this is just a good time today, isn't it? A little bit of tetanus. It's also called lockjaw. Spasms and contractions may spread to other muscles, irregular heartbeat and blood pressure, profuse sweating if you have tetanus. Clostridium tetani is a caustic agent found in soil, dust, and the intestines of humans and animals. So don't play with the intestines of humans or animals. Produces a neurotoxin called tetanospasmin. I mean, these names, seriously. Here is a poor, poor baby with tetanus. Isn't that sad? Again, here's, remember, spinal cord, central nervous system. Yes, sending a message through our neural pathways. There should be some neurotransmitter here, but there's not because you have an inhibitory neuron, so it doesn't allow your movement of your arm. So the central nervous system is sending a message, move the arm, move the arm. And it's not getting it because you have this inhibitory neuron that's caused by your tetanus. Does that make sense? That's what's happening. It's not allowing this to send the signal. Okay, pathogenesis. Can acquire through breaks in the skin or mucus. Distance of infection from the central nervous system determines the incubation period. Mortality rate is about 50% if left untreated. It's mostly decreased worldwide, and most cases occur where immunizations or adequate medical care is unavailable. So get a tetanus shot. Again, characteristic muscle contractions. Also, clean your wounds. Get a tetanus shot. There's a vaccine available, so go make sure you get a tetanus shot. Why is the incubation period of wound botulism more than twice as long as the incubation period of foodborne botulism? You can pause and answer that, or I will answer it for you in a super long way. Bacterial botulism that causes the illness, and not the bacterial infection itself. So one could get botulism on exposure to the toxins and without any infection by the bacteria. Contaminated food has bacteria growing in it for some time and thus has a good amount of toxins present. So your food is just growing and growing versus you get a wound and it doesn't have as much time to massively get contaminated. On ingestion of food, the person starts showing symptoms as early as 6 hours because that food, wash your food. The food has had time to like grow a ton of bacteria, so rinse it off. In the wound infections, you just like get a little cut and you get exposed. There's not as much there. So it's not going to have as much of an immediate effect. It takes time for that bacteria to get into a hospitable environment enough to reproduce. So that's why it takes longer. Again, wash your food, clean your wounds, wash your hands. Viruses more easily cross. Oh, now we're talking about viruses. Sorry, I didn't realize we had transformed into viruses. Good times. Viruses. One of the differences between viruses and bacteria in your nervous system is that viruses more readily cross the blood-brain barrier. They occur more frequently than bacterial and fungal infections in your nervous system, and they include meningitis, again, because they're a viral strain, polio, rabies, and encephalitis. This is going good places. Who's excited about meningitis, polio, rabies, and encephalitis? Yay! Okay, viral meningitis. Similar to bacterial meningitis, but it's actually milder. About 90% of the cases are caused by an RNA virus in the genus Enterovirus. It's spread via fecal contamination of food, water, or hands. Wash your vegetables, especially if you have organic vegetables, because organic vegetables are fertilized by poop and you can get meningitis. So wash your food. Damage to cells triggers meningitis, more common than bacterial, spread via respiratory droplets and feces, and diagnosed by signs and symptoms and absence of bacteria in the central spinal fluid. No specific treatment exists. Difficult to prevent the spread. Polio. Let's talk about polio. Polio was very common in the past. May become second human disease to be eradicated. We're hoping. Signs and symptoms. Asymptomatic infections are almost 90% of the case. Minor polio causes nonspecific symptoms. Non-paralytic polio, meaning you're not completely paralyzed, causes muscle spasms. Paralytic polio produces paralysis. And post-polio syndrome can be very debilitating. Poliovirus is the caustic agent and transmitted mostly by contaminated drinking water. And the cause, before we had a vaccine, not the cause, but one of the ways in which you can get treated is this iron lung. It's a really fascinating way that we kept lots of people alive. It just uses the pressure to actually force your lungs because the muscles don't contract properly because your central nervous system isn't telling you to breathe. So this giant iron lung breathes for you. Really revolutionary at the onset of polio. So kind of a big deal. Reports of naturally occurring polio. Fewer than 50 naturally acquired cases as late as 2018. Polio only exists endemically in Afghanistan and Pakistan, treated by identification of the virus. There are 2 very effective vaccines available, so feel free to get vaccinated. Rabies. Signs and symptoms. Neurological signs of virus reaches the central nervous system. Hyperaggression, hydrophobia, seizures, disorientation, hallucinations, and paralysis. Transmitted via bites or scratch from an infected animal that has rabies. So get your pets a rabies vaccine. It's mostly spread by animals, portions of the United States in which skunks, foxes, and raccoons are predominantly reservoirs for rabies, mostly the eastern. In Missouri, you do have areas where skunks will have rabies. That's just another reason to avoid skunks. Don't have a skunk pet. That was a thing you were going to do. Post-mortem detection is from Nagria bodies in the brain, treated by injecting human rabies immunoglobulin given vaccines and cleaning infection sites, prevented by controlling rabies